SBC Media.
Welcome to iGaming Daily, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe. Supported by SBC Summit Barcelona, the industry-leading conference bringing you the future of sports betting and iGaming.
SBC Summit Barcelona is the fastest growing sports betting and iGaming event in the industry, happening on the 19th to the 21st of September. Experience the entire global industry coverage under one roof, with 15,000 delegates, over 350 exhibitors, and so much more. Get your tickets now at sbcevents.com.
Last week, PayPal embraced a digital currency with plans for a stablecoin being unveiled. What does this mean for the growth of digital currencies, and how has it been received amongst key political figures? On potential plans, Dan Schulman, the president and CEO of PayPal, stated on the coin that the shift towards digital currency requires a stable instrument that is both digitally native and easily connected to fiat currencies like the US dollar. So this will be the discussion on today's episode of iGaming Daily with me, your host, James Ross, and I will be joined by Payment Experts editor, Joe Streeter, and the science business journalist, Callum Williams. How are you doing today?
Science business journalist?
That's what you are.
What did you say? What did you call it? What did you call it?
Science.
Science business.
Science. I said science.
You said science?
Science business.
Nah, he said science, didn't he?
Yeah, I thought science, I'll be honest with you. I was going to run with it though, but I don't know.
I know, yeah, I was just going to roll with it then.
That's Callum Williams, payment expert business journalist. There you go. There's your introduction. You're getting nothing fancy now.
Cheers, mate. Cheers for that lovely introduction.
So you're okay,
yeah? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing all right after that nice bit of praise.
Joe, how are you doing? You okay?
I'm doing good, thank you. I'm doing very well, and I'm excited for today's podcast. It should be an interesting one, a bit of a technical one, but that's what we do. We break down the challenging subjects.
Yeah, we do. And let's kind of just break down this one, because crypto for me has kind of been a hit and a miss love relationship, to be honest. There's parts where I've absolutely enjoyed watching where it's come from, and there's been parts where I've absolutely hated where it's going. But first off, Joe, I'll go to you on this one. Kind of PayPal's new kind of plan. What does this launch of a stablecoin mean for the industry and kind of the growth of cryptocurrency in general?
Well, obviously the future remains to be seen, but whenever one of the big players, the trusted, legitimate players in the payment space, gets involved in digital currencies like this, it's a potentially big move. There was some friction from US officials and from political figures. That's to be expected, especially with the regulatory climate so uncertain at the moment for many regions. And also it's a stable coin. It's worth noting it's a stable coin. So hopefully we don't see it stifle innovation too much within the sort of wild sphere of crypto. But yeah, a really interesting move. Be interesting to see how it develops, but something that could certainly help thrust digital currencies into the mainstream.
You said stifle innovation within actual cryptocurrency itself. How would a stablecoin do that?
So I think the main reason is because they're pegged against fiat currencies. I think it loses some of the rogueness and the wildcard maverick element of crypto. There's a real pretense and a nervousness about the growth of CBDCs and stablecoins that they will hinder innovation from some of the more, the more creative players in the game.
Yeah, so more of the Ethereums of the world, more of like the popular ones, because there's a lot of cryptocurrencies out there that are just that what they do is they serve the decentralized. So a stable coin is just basically pegged against the fiat currency just to provide stability, pretty much, and avoid that volatility that happened a lot last year with the numerous collapses in the market and such forth. So I think that's why PayPal have gone in the direction with a stable coin.
Yeah, but with that stability, potentially you do lose an element of creativity and an element of rogueness that has come with the Dogecoins of the world, and it's an interesting one to see how it develops, though, because I think a balance is there to be found between the two mediums.
Is going against the rogue actually a bad thing in terms of cryptocurrency? Because one of the issues you actually have with crypto is the fact it's such a volatile currency, and when you are investing in a currency, you don't know whether it's going to absolutely plummet or go to the moon like Doge did, and it has so much influence on outside parties like the Elon Musks of the world. So isn't having a stable coin a really good thing to kind of solidify the future of crypto and just create a bit more trust moving forward with it?
No, yeah. I mean, I think that's why stable coins were introduced, was to provide that stability and that foundation of being able to have that securely, in your wallet and use it as a payment, as a method of payment and a medium of exchange. I think that is. I mean, I know that I've listened and I've spoke to a lot of Bitcoin enthusiasts, and that is what that is still like the essence of Bitcoin. It's not really meant to be this trading instrument, to this investment. Pretty much, it's meant to be a peer-to-peer, decentralized, no out third party type of payment transaction, which has kind of gone away over the last couple of years. I just think people go into these cryptocurrencies as a way to make money, pretty much, and so stable coins are kind of there to bring that payment element back to cryptocurrencies.
I think the idea of kind of around cryptocurrency is great moving forward to the future, but I've always been kind of, the rogueness of it has kind of put me off it, and kind of, like I said, people going in to make money off such a volatile market is kind of what's created these scare stories around crypto. Go on, Joe, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think that there is a balance to be met there. There is a balance to be found, because part of it is sort of the creativity and that rogue is a harsh word, but that wild element of it is sort of part of it. And as we further evolve into Web3 and it becomes a greater prospect, a more alluring prospect with far deeper opportunities, I think there's something to be said for the various coins. But I do see your point. I do see what you're saying, and to have it pegged against fiat adds a level of stability that is certainly required if we are going to see digital currencies deeper into the mainstream.
I like how you said rogue was a harsh word, but then went on to say wild instead. But cryptocurrency is the Wild West at the moment. But let's kind of steer this down to the gambling industry, because we are a gambling and iGaming business B2B podcast. So does this move for PayPal mean that kind of crypto is more likely to be accepted within the gambling industry? Because we've already hinted at just how maybe untrustworthy some cryptocurrencies can be.
Yeah, I think so. I think the move towards stability, as we've said, it certainly helps boost crypto's presence within gambling. And I think this move with PayPal is one that is a step towards further stability. It's a step in the right direction of stabilization. So, yeah, I definitely think it does. And obviously, PayPal has a great relationship with the gambling industry. Generally speaking, it's widely used as a checkout option for gambling operators. So to see somebody like PayPal legitimizing digital currency is certainly big for the potential relationship between gambling and crypto. And yeah, for the big operators I'm talking about now, it's a tricky one because we're talking about various markets and various different regulatory frameworks. In the UK, quite a hesitant stance on crypto in terms of regulation and in terms of the gambling industry. So it's interesting to see where it goes, though. But I definitely think a step closer to stability is a positive thing.
Yeah, just to piggyback what you just said there, Joe. I mean, I know there's a lot of gambling firms such as Roobet and Stake. They kind of work in like the grey market areas when it comes to crypto gambling. But I know not a lot of the major operators do facilitate cryptocurrencies. And like you said, it's all about the regulations. I mean, at the moment, the US is in a major battle at the moment with, the US Securities and Exchange Commission. They're in a major battle right now with the exchanges over there and what they deem to be a security or not, which is basically a financial instrument. And the exchanges are saying that these cryptocurrencies aren't. So it does depend on if the regulation can be sorted in, say, the United States or, maybe closer to being regulated as the UK. So, yeah, there's definitely some jurisdictions and some regulations that need to be sorted out for it to be fully embraced.
I can't see crypto being fully embraced within the next 5 to 10 years. You still currently have a lot of banking/payment issues within the online casino space with your normal central bank. And these are still issues that regulators require high standards for. So before we actually move on to a digital space, and you mentioned yourself, Stake and Roobet, they work in the grey market. There's absolutely no way a lot of regulated markets throughout definitely Western Europe and the US, they're not going to embrace kind of these crypto assets or crypto casinos that function in a grey market when everything at the moment, and as it should be, is about responsible gaming. And to have that kind of cloud lingering over crypto at the moment when it comes to gambling is, I think there needs to be some stronger forms of regulation in place before that kind of happens. And Joe, again, I don't know if you want to jump on that.
Yeah, no, you're right. And it's that step from a grey market to the regulated market is an incredibly tough one. I think you've seen that, James, in the casino space. That's a really hard move to make, and I think a lot of crypto exchanges are sort of battling that now. Callum mentioned the ongoing regulatory warfare, if you like, between Binance, Coinbase, and the SEC. I know there was a development this morning on that. Feels like there's developments every week, but Callum, not to put you on the spot, but yeah, what's the latest on that one? Do you have an update on Binance and the SEC?
Yeah, so Binance, who are the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange, they've just filed for a protection order against the charges placed by the SEC, basically stemming that Binance, they believe that there's just a limited amount of access to what they're trying to get out of Binance, which it's a bit nefarious. It's a bit, he say, she say, they saying, Binance have been circulating unregistered securities in the form of the cryptos, whereas Binance are also saying that, they don't really have that much jurisdiction to kind of almost govern Binance, because Binance have even saying that, they aren't even listed in America, which with Binance.us, that's a completely different company. So yeah, it's been quite a long battle, and then the SEC aren't just battling Binance as well; they're battling Coinbase, Ripple, and yeah, they've kind of been in this wave of going down this security wave down with the exchanges ever since the turn of the year. So yeah, it's been you can't see regulation in the US happening anytime soon, that's for sure.
That was going to be my next question, so I kind of want you to expand a little bit on that. It's kind of like where we're actually at with the framework as it stands in the US.
Yeah, so like I said, at the beginning of the year, since the collapse of FTX and, the collapse of Terra Luna, there was a real market decline. Loads of people lost up to billions of dollars was lost in those type of collapses. And there's even, collapses in Celsius and such. So the number one question coming into this year was investor protection, investor security. How can we assure that this will not happen again? And then the SEC have basically just been doubling down on the exchanges. I know they've already had a battle with Ripple going down more than 2 years ago. That recently, over their XRP token, Ripple's XRP token, recently that was ruled as not a security by a New York judge, which was a kind of a landmark win for the crypto industry. But in terms of, and also to add on, I know there was a Republican representative who, his name escapes me, but he even stated that the SEC needs to be investigated for its handling over crypto exchanges and cryptocurrencies. And obviously the crypto industry is largely against SEC's stance of, this is of this hardcore type of style. I mean, that's not me saying it, that's the industry. So I just think that they need a bit, I think what they're asking for is a lot more clarity on what is deemed security and what is not. And just a lot of clarity in general on where what crypto exchanges can do in the country. But as terms as a bill, that they're still largely behind the UK and the European Union who've actually formalised a crypto bill in the coming years.
Yeah, I think some of the criticisms around the pay, to bring it back to sort of where we began with the PayPal move, some of the criticisms around the PayPal move, specifically from Democratic Party members, and that Maxine Waters specifically, a very prominent Democratic member, is that there isn't currently the regulatory framework to support it. So to unveil this type of stablecoin in a framework that is non-existent and is something of a wild west is a bold move. And I think the cases are very significant as well, because it's going to be hard to create a framework around the cases between Binance, Coinbase, and the SEC. Things sort of need to settle. The dust needs to settle on the regulatory battles before, I think, anyway, we see sort of some positive movements on framework in the US. It also, as with anything in any sort of political landscape, it becomes a political football, and you have the right saying this and the left saying that, and they go back and forth, and one objects to the other because it's come from the other side of the house. So yeah, it needs to be taken seriously. We need to lose tribalism on it, and hopefully progression is made for sure.
That's a great point. To be honest, it was nearly lost when you said Wild Wild West, because all that came to my head was that Will Smith song, like, it's the Wild Wild West. But no,
well, Will Smith needs to get involved and slap some of these politicians and get them sorted on a crypto. Maybe he needs to slap a few crypto guys as well, for fairness. They're too wild.
Does he need to get jiggy with it?
Yeah.
Well, but it's a good point, and you raised something which I don't really agree with, where you said like the dust needs to settle before we're creating something positive like a stable coin. I'm like, with crypto, because it's such a volatile entity in itself, once something does settle, dust will rise again. It will. That's just the type of market it is. Well, what PayPal's kind of done here, and it's kind of the one thing I agree with for the future of crypto to create that stability, is bringing, as it says, a stable coin into kind of regulation and framework, and that will help regulators once it's approved and once it gets a lot more kind of oomph behind it. I think it will reassure a lot more gambling companies to invest, because there's nothing worse. In my head, if I put 1,000 Doge coins on a slot spin and I win like a times 500 multiplier, if I keep that in my account for one day, the value of that Dogecoin could plummet dramatically, because that's not a main coin, is it? That's an altcoin. Doge, and they were more volatile than your main coins. So to have something stable like that, I think, just creates the reassurance in the market for the gambling sector itself.
I think also what we're forgetting with what PayPal's trying to do with PYUSD, which is their stablecoin, is that I know that their senior vice president spoke to CNBC recently on this. He's looking at it as a payment avenue. He's looking at this as dramatically increasing the speed of payments to almost seconds, pretty much. So he's even said like that in terms of cost and programmability of stablecoins, he's seeing it as like the next wave of like peer-to-peer, account-to-account payments, which, if it can increase that speed of payments. And then obviously if you were to bring that over into the iGaming and casino and betting landscape, that would be hugely fruitful, I believe.
I'm just going to round up this podcast with one final question, and it's regarding CBDCs, their central bank digital currencies. So, Joe, we'll come with you, and then Callum, you can answer as well. What progress has been made in terms of CBDCs, and is this something that is, inevitable moving forward now?
So obviously it's a tricky question, because we're talking about various markets, and each market is sort of moving at their own pace. I think there are some markets that are moving faster than others. An interesting development this week is, Canada, a paper from the Bank of Canada exploring the possibility of CBDCs. And I believe Canada would have been probably one. If I was an odds maker, I would have backed Canada as the favourite to implement CBDCs. That's just me, but they did sort of pour cold water on it a little bit, and they said that for the most vulnerable in society who wouldn't be able to embrace CBDCs, the lowest points of the economy wouldn't be brought up because of them, because it would need widespread adoption. And I think from a personal perspective, I think you're going to see a bit of resistance to CBDCs. I think as political tribalism has increased, think whichever government is trying to bring them in will struggle based on opposition, and there will always be that opposition. And I think it's going to be a tricky one to implement.
Yeah, no, I do agree with some of the. There's been a lot of skepticism and backlash recently into CBDCs. I mean, I know a lot of that stems from the privacy concerns and data tracking, which if the governments have been stating that is not the case, but no, I think CBDCs at the moment, they're still in the kind of their infancy. I know China's it's during its pilot test that's kind of going okay for them at the minute. But then there's also places like Nigeria who the Nigerian people are completely rejecting it at the minute, and they're not adopting it. So I think it's a case by case basis from different countries, and I think over the next 10 years, it's definitely something that is gonna shake up the payment landscape and the financial landscape.
That's a really interesting point. I just want to touch on that, but I think the China has seen a CBDC and the digital their version of the digital pound grow exponentially and have real success. But I think that sort of resistance, that sort of conspiratorial view that you speak of, is only going to be fueled further by the growth of CBDCs in China, in the Western world, if you get what I mean.
No, definitely, yeah. I agree.
I want to go back onto something that Callum said, but you were talking kind of similar about this subject, but from the idea of a 1960s, 70s way of thinking, because they were closing down the banks and stuff. But is not digital currency kind of the way forward? And I just want to get your thoughts on if you think digital currency is a positive step moving forward, and it's only kind of a small minority's voices that are being heard in a sense, or are they major concerns that people are not thinking about?
So there's two major points of concern there, really. We raised both in the space of 5 minutes. I think one is the privacy fears, and I was going to ask you both actually if you would have privacy fears if every transaction was tracked on a system. That's really interesting to me, and it would certainly be interesting from a gambling perspective, because quite often players don't want every transaction to be shown, to be out into the world. So yeah, an interesting point there. But then I think there is also a valuable point, a really vital point as we shift towards digital finance, that banks being closed is not great. I don't think that's a good thing. I think for the most vulnerable in society, I do think they need face-to-face contact. I think they need something more than just over the phone contact or digital contact, because also it increases the threat of fraud on some of the most vulnerable in society. So yeah, quite a general answer, but I don't know. I think there's definitely a balance to be found, because like Canada pointed out this week, the Bank of Canada, you do need a focus on those most vulnerable when it comes to financial products.
I agree in essence, but I also kind of think with progress, you need to take big leaps forward. And yes, you can tailor for kind of the older generation and with the kind of not having all these bank closures, but you can't then stifle, as we say, innovation and progress by thinking too much in the past, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I also agree that the people who are dependent on cash need to still have those cash services available to them, but also it depends how we build and we design this digital currency for us, the digital pound, and it's going to take a lot of work. I don't think it's going to happen over the net. I mean, it could. What the UK are saying, it may come by 2030, which kind of gives them enough time to properly to prepare this and make it fraud resistant and have right risk assessment issues. But in general consensus for me, I just think it's something that's bound to happen.
And with that, I think education needs to come into play as well. People need to learn how to kind of transfer and use this digital currency instead of kind of tailoring to both ends of the spectrum here. Let's create a platform to teach these people they might be illiterate in digital currency. It's not a bad thing to say, because it's just how people are. Some people don't like to evolve with the digital times, but to create a platform for them to learn and utilize a product like this will make them feel more reassured. And Joe, you said a question before we went onto this topic, so let's round off the podcast with that question. You mentioned how would we feel if our data or our transactions were tracked? Is that correct?
Yeah. So just it's a little bit not to shift it to a conspiratorial place, but yeah, how would you feel if you sort of lose any sort of privacy on your transactions? Does it bother you? Because I know, if I'm being honest, I've spoken to people about it and they're not bothered, because it doesn't matter if you buy Walker's crisps every day for lunch. Like that data doesn't really hold any value to anyone apart from marketing companies. But yeah, would you be bothered from a price?
I think if it
perspective?
showed me buying loads of Walkers crisps for my lunch every day, my doctor could see that. It might actually help me out moving forward. But I'm not against it, to be honest. I can understand the hesitance around this, or kind of the scared perception. But certainly if you're gambling, I mean, it would be so much easier for operators and kind of regulators to see that this person, his transactions are this much in the space of a month. Then you can kind of determine if he's gambling too much and the sense of how much he's gambling compared to how much he actually earns. So for a problem gambling rate, I think that's a really good idea, to have a platform that tracks everything that you spend. Because you can make an easy kind of decision that it's not just what he's gambling compared to how much he's earning. It's maybe you can also make a comparison of how much he actually spends on his day-to-day life and his normal outgoings compared to just his betting outgoings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and balance that out.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think you can do that, on my Bet365 account, and obviously other operators are available. But I can see my 30-day wins, losses, and that type of thing. But I think then when it goes further and expands further, and also, other people can see that, and it sort of creates more of a wider social picture of myself that, I can't get. I think it's sort of there anyway, but you can't get a mortgage because you spend too much back in Man United to score over 2.5 goals last weekend. So
that's a way to think about it, but I think it actually just gives you a bigger safety net. Because if it only covers just your gambling background, then you're only really going to be liable for what you actually spend. But if it actually covers everything you spend in a month, it covers you. They're actually it could protect you for future when you are trying to say looking for a mortgage and stuff. If you're betting too much, right, we need to tone it down a bit here.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it would be a lot more efficient as well, I'd say.
Yeah.
A lot more quicker and efficient.
That's all we've got time for. I could actually talk about this for days. I didn't really think I could, but I could talk about this for quite a while. Joe, Callum, the payment expert, business journalist, not the scientist.
Business with a B.
Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, there was some good chemistry there for sure. Anyway,
all right, I'm gonna sign off on that bombshell. I'm gonna sign off on that bombshell. Right, on that bombshell, Joe, Callum, thank you for joining us today. For the listeners out there, if you want to learn more about the topic that was discussed in today's podcast, click on the links in the description below. That will take you to the payment expert sites and articles crafted by Joe and Callum. Again, Joe, Callum, thank you for joining us. And to our listeners out there, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of iGaming Daily, brought to you in conjunction with SBC Summit Barcelona, being held at the Fira Barcelona Montjuic on the 19th to the 21st of September. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News Network, or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.